Hello, everyone. I'm going to go through the book of Revelation a little bit and talk about who the two beasts are that are mentioned in the book of Revelation. I'm not a professional by any means. I'm just kind of talking here. But this is what I've done. This is what the Lord has shown me, and through my own research. And yes, it's not what you expect, and that's exactly how Lucifer works. He works in chaos and confusion. So let's get into this. First, I'm going to start with two verses from the beginning of Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, and this will give a little bit of a history of the beast and where it comes from when I go into detail about these two verses and explain them. So Revelation 2:9, I know your tribulation and poverty, but you are rich, and the slander from those who call themselves Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. And Revelation 3:9, behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, those who call themselves Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will cause them to come and fall prostrate before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. So twice the synagogue of Satan is mentioned, and twice those who call themselves Jews and are not. So you have to ask yourself, is this particular demographic that Christ's talking about, why are they so important that he mentioned them twice in the letters to the seven churches? So there are four factions or four demographics main demographics within the Jewish global community. The first one is the first three I'm going to list are Hebraic, so they're descendants or the closest descendants to the original Hebrews. And anyone watching this should know who the original Hebrews are, the 12 tribes of Israel. They were promised a great kingdom with great kings by God. He promised Abraham, their forefather. Now, so these three groups are the Sephardic, the Mizrahi, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, and the Ethiopian Jews. They are all, the Sephardic split off from Solomon when he started worshiping idols, and we'll get into that in a minute. The Ethiopian were the tribe of Dan, I believe Asher and Ephraim, and they went down south to Ethiopia. And the Mizrahi are from like the Greek, pushing a bit north. But they are the actual descendants of the Hebrews. The majority of them are anyways. Now you have a fourth group, and this is the most common group in the world. They make up about 83% of the global Jewish community right now, and they make up 33% of the Israel's community, or of Israel's population. They also are pretty much exclusively in charge of Israel's decision-making, public policies, government, all that stuff. So this group's called the Ashkenazi. And you may have heard of them. There's many controversies, right? There's conspiracies, there's all this stuff of where they come from, but I will tell you where they come from, because in order to understand where the beast comes from, you need to understand the history of the beast and what makes it the beast. So the Ashkenazi originate, and you can find this in Genesis 10, verses 2-3. It talks about a man by the name of Ashkenaz. Now Ashkenaz was the great-grandson of Noah. He was the grandson of Japheth and the son of Gomer. Okay? So that immediately means that the Ashkenazi, this sect within Judaism, within modern Judaism, it immediately tells you they are not Hebrew, because Abraham, the father of all Hebrews, the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, not the actual father, but the one that God made the promise to give them a great kingdom and great kings and all that stuff, well, he descended from Shem, who was the oldest of Noah's sons. And Ashkenaz, who the Ashkenazi come from, he descended from Gomer and Japheth, which is the middle child of Noah. Okay. So why is this significant? Well, it's very significant because the largest population of self-proclaimed Jews, or God's chosen people in the world, are not actually God's chosen people. They're not even Hebrews. Keep in mind that Judaism, or Jews as it was never a religion, right? It was a culture, for lack of better words. It was God chose the Hebrews, right? And the reason why he chose them was to bring Christ into this world. Okay, everything revolves around Christ. Actually, Elijah and Paul both say that if the Hebrews hadn't been chosen to bring God's seed into this world, they would have been just like Sodom and Gomorrah. So, right? So they were picked to bring God's chosen, to bring Christ into this world, right? So, so the Hebrews were chosen to do that, but the Ashkenazi are not Hebrews. So they originate in a place, because Ashkenaz moved north, and he moved to northern Iran and northern Turkey, became known as the lands of Ashkenaz. Also pieces of like Georgia and stuff like that, the Russian Caucasus there, they became part of the lands of Ashkenaz as well. So northern Iran, the Russian Caucasus, and northern Turkey all became the lands of Ashkenaz, okay? Now, in order to understand how they became Jewish, and how they became part of the Jewish demographic, we'll have to go back a little bit to right after Christ died. So after Christ died is when Judaism moved from being a culture and a way of life, or the practice of Judaism, the practice of the Hebrews, went from being a culture and a way of life and a lifestyle to a religion, right? Because Christ died and resurrected, and Judaism was supposed to, in its practices, the Pentateuch and all that, became obsolete. Christ fulfilled it. Christ is the law, right? But there was a group, and Josephus puts them in about, well, by the time they got dispersed by Emperor Hadrian, which is what I'm getting at, there was about 500,000 of them, like a decade prior to that. There's about 500,000 actual Hebrews left in Galilee, Judea, whatever, right? The term Jew itself comes from Judah. Okay, you only ever actually see the term Jew used in the Old Testament once. No, I shouldn't say once, but in one book, and it's Esther, and they're talking about how he's from Judah. Okay, Judah being the southern nation and Israel being the northern nation when the kingdom of Israel split, and it became the new kingdom of Israel and the kingdom/territory of Judah. So after Christ died, okay, the emperor at the time was Hadrian, a little ways after Christ died. It was close to a century after Christ died. The emperor at the time was Hadrian, okay? And he got sick and tired of the Hebrew population in Judea, Galilee, in that area, revolting. And they revolted all the time. It was their favorite thing to do. And he got sick and tired of it. So the first thing he did was he said, there will be no more Hebrews, okay? There will be no more Hebrews in this land. And he proceeded to push them all out. Now, the majority of them resettled along what was called at the time the Silk Road, right? And I'm sure you've heard about the Silk Road. And they resettled along there, and they became quite popular. They became quite well known. They became quite reputable, right? They were known. They set up their businesses, and they made mad money because people trusted them because they were considered trustworthy, right? But Judaism as itself, the practice of Judaism, was all but dead. There was less than a million left in the world. They were and they had all broken off and gone into their own areas and done their own thing. But the majority of them resettled on the Silk Road and started very successful financial, logistical businesses, trade businesses, right? Now, fast forward some centuries, okay, and now they're established businesses. They're established peoples along the Silk Road. These are the Hebrews that were displaced by Hadrian. And they become so well known and so trusted that empires/kingdoms that normally wouldn't talk or trade with each other, who were along the Silk Road, started using them as liaisons because they were considered trustworthy. So they were established, ready to rock. They had set up trade. Life was good. Now, at this time, there was the lands of Ashkenaz, also known as the Kingdom of Ashkenaz, which we've already mentioned, spread across northern Iran, northern Turkey, and into the Caucasus, Russian Caucasus. So they existed, and they started looking down. Actually, if you want more proof of the Kingdom of Ashkenaz, you can find it in the book Jeremiah, chapter 51. They talk about the Kingdom of Ashkenaz, the peoples of Ashkenaz. So what ended up happening, and there's studies that show this, okay, what ended up happening was the Hebrews' reputation was starting to precede them. They were becoming very wealthy, and people in the surrounding areas, particularly in the lands of Ashkenaz, started to take notice, okay? So they started to immigrate to the Silk Road and setting up shop and running businesses and stuff. Now, the kicker was, and this isn't everyone, okay? This isn't everyone. This is never, when I'm talking, I'm never making general overstatements, okay? It's a core, key groups of people who would be old blood, like old families or supremacists, kind of thing, right? People that believe that, well, we all know what the definition of a supremacist is. Okay, so this group of people from the lands of Ashkenaz started coming down to the Silk Road and setting up shop. And one of the things they did was they started telling everyone they were Jews. They converted to Judaism in order to basically receive this mantle of trusthood, of trustfulness, this mantle of respect and stuff that these actual Hebrews had earned through centuries of work, basically, and family hardship and all this stuff, right? But the people from the lands of Ashkenaz came down, and they started stealing their business, they started stealing their reputation, and they were doing nefarious things. In fact, the language Yiddish, which is almost exclusively spoken by the Ashkenazi, was invented by them in order to, and this is according to a study, in order for them to basically keep their trade and what they were doing secretive. But it sounded enough like Hebrew, the language Hebrew, that people who weren't Hebraic wouldn't know the difference and would just assume, oh, they're speaking Hebrew. But in reality, Yiddish is like a mixture of Hebrew, Frankish, German, a bunch of other stuff mixed together. So they made their own language in order to keep their work secretive. And their entire purpose of coming down here and taking on the mantle of God's chosen people, because keep in mind, once again, there were no other Jews in the world at this time. There was the Hebrews, and that's who was known as the Jews, because they were from Judah/Judea when the Romans renamed it. So that's why they were known as Jews. So up until this point, once again, Judaism wasn't a religion, it was a culture, it was a heritage, it was the way this tribe lived, right? It was a livelihood kind of thing. It was the way this group lived. And then it wasn't until, and it was all but dead. Judaism as a religion pretty much didn't even exist after Christ died, because everyone kind of dispersed and went off and did their own thing. It couldn't distract away from Christ. It couldn't take away from his ministry and what was happening with him. Well, these people from the lands of Ashkenaz who came down, they resurrected Judaism, and they started to make it prominent again. By 1000 CE, already 3% of the world's Jewish population were Ashkenazi Jews, right? And they created their own version of Judaism, which it's modern Judaism, but I call it Ashkenazi Judaism. And it added in a whole bunch of pagan and satanic kind of things. Like, for example, the Star of David. The Star of David was never used as a symbol of Judaism. It's not even mentioned in the Bible. It's not mentioned in the Torah, the Talmud. It's not mentioned in the Quran. It's not mentioned in any of these holy books from the Abrahamic, quote unquote holy books, I should say, from the Abrahamic religions. It's never mentioned, right? Actually, the only thing that is mentioned, I'll say for sure in the Bible, is the Star of Moloch, right? It's mentioned by Stephen in the book of Acts when he's being stoned. It's mentioned in the book of Kings. I want to say First Kings, when they're talking about Solomon and how he built the second temple, and then he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and he started worshiping their pagan gods, right, which upset Jehovah. And one of the gods that's specifically mentioned is Moloch, right? It can be pronounced Molech, Moloch. Sometimes he's known as Saturn, Rampha. If you're curious to know which one of the fallen angels he is, which one of the watchers, it's Kazdeja was his name. But anyways, so Moloch was being worshipped by Solomon and all these different people. So the Star of David doesn't actually exist in the Bible, but if you look up the Star of Moloch, it is identical to the Star of David. Like, identical. And a prominent Ashkenazi family in medieval times, shortly after they started becoming a prominent sect within Judaism, he didn't create the Star of David / Moloch, but he named it the Star of David. It was red originally, and then he proceeded to basically start mainstreaming that as a symbol of Judaism, right, of modern Judaism. Oh, this is how we show off who we are, the Star of David, the Star of David. They have found engravings of the supposed Star of David. I'm gonna call it the Star of Moloch, because that's what it is. They found engravings in the inner city of David in Jerusalem, in the Old Jerusalem, but once again, the Book of Kings shows us that Solomon built temples and places of worship for Moloch around Jerusalem and in Jerusalem, And if you are worshiping, if the king of a kingdom is worshiping a god, like a demonic entity or whatever pagan god, then the rest of that kingdom's probably going to follow suit, or most of them will follow suit and then worship the same thing. So it would make sense to me that there's carvings of the Star of Moloch within Jerusalem, so that debunks that whole thing. Like, oh, it's because we saw it from here, or it's this, what? No. It's the Star of Moloch. Carrying on. So the Ashkenazi were the ones that made, particularly a guy by the name of Rothschild. That's not their original name. Their original name was like Bauer or something else, but they changed their name throughout history. It was a Rothschild who used the Star of David, or the Star of Moloch, called it the Star of David, and made it red. Now it's the color you see it. Anyway, so these people came down from Ashkenaz. They started setting up businesses, and oftentimes, 100% of the time, they pushed the Hebrews out, and the Hebrews started getting a bad name because of this other group that's claiming to be Jews, but they're doing nefarious things. So as you can see, the entire recreation, the entire resurrection of modern Judaism with its own pagan twist to it, right, is the whole purpose of it. The whole purpose of these people from the lands of Ashkenaz, the whole purpose of them taking up this mantle and pretending to be God's chosen people was to make money, and to become rich and wealthy. And as we well know, Christ says you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve mammon, which is money and financial gain, and you cannot serve God. So the very first thing they did, the whole basis of what they were doing, was based off serving mammon and not God, because, well, God is Christ, and Christ came here and all that good stuff. Okay. So they pushed all the Hebrews off the Silk Road, and they started to take over, and people started to know the Jews. Whenever someone used the term Jew, it was the Ashkenazi. They were the majority. By 1930, they made up 92% of the global Jewish population. So in 930 years, so almost a millennium, they went from being 3% of the Jewish global population to 92% of the Jewish global population. I don't care how, that's a pretty significant jump, even if it is over almost 1,000 years. That's a pretty significant jump. So, interesting, right? Now, that's who the Ashkenazi are. They're not actually Hebrew, okay? They're not actually Jewish. They've taken this mantle and then they twisted modern Judaism. They've twisted Judaism. What they teach and what they follow, right, is barely even a remnant of what the original Hebraic teachings were from the Pentateuch, the 5 original books, which I think is called the Torah now, but I think the Torah's got extra stuff. Anyways, they don't even follow that. Now they follow the Talmud, which was written by a bunch of rabbis in 500 AD or 500 CE, and then it got banned by the Catholic Church in 525 AD, because the Talmud, written once again by a bunch of rabbis, okay, and keep in mind this Babylonian Talmud is now the main structure for Judaism this day, like modern Ashkenazi Judaism. This is their book. This is the book, the one they follow. Okay, well, the Talmud has some interesting things in it. For example, it says that Christ was born of a prostitute. It refers to Christ as the son of a prostitute. Okay, which is interesting because that's the exact opposite, right? So modern Judaism, Ashkenazi Judaism, it is taught to them that Christ is the son of a prostitute. Followers of Christ, we know that he is the son of a virgin. It's a miracle birth. Whereas they believe the exact opposite, where it was a birth that was going to happen because she was a prostitute, and so eventually she's going to get pregnant, right? Now, a lot of rabbis will argue this, be like, well, it doesn't actually say that. It's talking about, somebody else. Well, it refers to the person as the Nazarene, so we're going to go out on a limb here and say it's Jesus, and plus it talks about his mother being Mary and all that stuff. Anyways, so son of the prostitute, right, versus son of a virgin. You see the complete opposite here, right? Modern Ashkenazi Judaism is anti-Christ. I don't care what anyone says. If you sit down and you look at it, it is beyond anti-Christ. It is actively trying to convince us that Christ did not exist and that we are crazy for thinking he did. And it mocks him. It absolutely mocks him. Okay? We know Christ is God, the Son of God, the triune God. We know this, right? In modern Judaism, in Ashkenazi Judaism, they believe he was a false Messiah, a false prophet, a terrorist. Exact opposite once again. So you have the prostitute, the false Messiah, false prophet, terrorist, versus the virgin, born of a virgin, right? And the Son of God, God himself, incarnate, embodied. Okay? So you see how there's like complete opposites? The Talmud teaches us that there's 8 different genders, including male and female. The Bible teaches us there's only male and female. You see, like, it's all complete opposite when you start to look at it. Okay? Then, right, we swing around. So by 1930, okay, 92% of the world's Jewish population were Ashkenazi. Okay? 1933, 34, Mr. Hitler shows up on the scene. Okay? Now, if you start to dig into history a little bit, you'll find something very strange. Hitler hunted Ashkenazi. Like, specifically. Very strange. Now, what he did, terrible, disgusting, and I hope he is being punished for it. But it has to be noted, it has to be identified, it has to be taken note that about 4 million, if not more, the majority of the Jews that were killed by Hitler during World War II were Ashkenazi. Now, the majority of Jews in Europe at that time were in fact Ashkenazi, so that does make sense. But when you go to specific countries like Bulgaria, where they had their main population of Jews was Hebrews, right? Sephardic, Mizrahi, whatever it may be. I'll just say Hebrews. Okay. Hitler spared them. They had a population of about 50,000 Hebrews, and Hitler didn't touch them. He spared them. But he killed the Ashkenazi that were there, the few thousand. So it's just like, these are weird little things, right, that have popped up. Same thing, like, overall, he only killed about 70,000 Hebrews during his genocide, like the madman he was. He only killed about 70,000 Hebrews in total, and he killed upward to 4-5 million Ashkenazi, or whatever it was, like insane amounts. Okay. Now this has a point. I'm getting to the point here, but I'm just pointing. I would like to just make note, right, that the Hebrews, it seems, were pretty protected during World War II, but the Ashkenazi were hunted and killed and slaughtered and forced to wear the Star of David, the Star of Moloch, whatever, their symbol. It's sad, like how many there's millions of innocent people killed. I'm just historical facts here. It's an interesting note. Okay. Now, prior to World War II, okay, the state of Israel had already been planned. Okay. The state of Israel was exclusively being planned by Ashkenazi, rich, powerful families, people, what have you. The founder the commonly acknowledged founder and first prime minister, and like third prime minister of the state of Israel, was a man by the name of Ben Gurion. Okay. Last name spelled Gurion. Okay. So he was the founder. He also had this plan in works a long time with different, what are called Zionist groups, which is now used like a dirty word, right? Oh, you can't say that it's anti-Semitic, except that's what all these groups used to be called. We're Zionist groups. World Zionist Organization, this Zionist organization, this. Anyways, so this man, with the financial backing of rich families like the Rothschilds and stuff like that, he was going to form the state of Israel. A little bit of a catch is that the state of Israel was not meant for Hebrews. It didn't have the same rules that it does now. It was meant specifically for the Ashkenazi, which Ben Gurion is, and I'm paraphrasing here his quote, but he is quoted saying that the Ashkenazi were the superior Jews as opposed to the Hebrews. He considered Ashkenazi above the Hebrews. He considered the converted Jews who were not Semites to be above the born Hebrews who are Semites and God's chosen people. So very, very strange. But Israel, the state of Israel, was specifically meant for the Ashkenazi. Okay? Was specifically meant for as Christ refers to them, the Synagogue of Satan. Hitler, the evil piece of garbage he was, his violent, disgusting actions stopped the plan in its tracks, because he killed off so many Ashkenazi that they couldn't possibly populate this entire area, this country of Israel, with just Ashkenazi anymore. So what happened was, and it worked out very conveniently, and this is in Ben Gurion's biography, it worked out very conveniently for them, is that as soon as they established the state of Israel, all the Muslim countries in the area that up until that point had been living peacefully with their Hebrew neighbors, intermingled with them, got really, really angry, as we all know, and that anger is still going to this day. They got really angry, and they started to attack the actual Hebrews that had been up until that point living peacefully in their country. So Ben Gurion said, against his better will, or against his better, not his will, against his better judgment, he invited all the Hebrews in to fill up positions that needed to be there. And history says it was to rescue them from these Muslim states that randomly started hating them. But we know for a fact the only reason the Muslim states got angry and started attacking them and driving them out is because the state of Israel was created. Whether you agree with that or not, or agree with the state of Israel existing as an entity, the Lord's will be done always. Okay? And it very clearly says in Revelation that God gives the beast power and influence on purpose to see who stands, kind of thing, right? And it's the final push. So that's who the Ashkenazi is. That's who the Synagogue of Satan is. Oh, side note, fun fact for you. The founder of the Church of Satan, it's like Levy, last name Levy or something. I can't remember his name. It's like, I want to say it's like Henry Staten Levy or something like that. Anyways, he was an Ashkenazi. Very strange, right? The Synagogue of Satan is the Ashkenazi according to Christ. They're the only Jews who pretend to be but are not, right? And then the person who invented the Church of Satan was in fact an Ashkenazi, and even up until his dying day, he was very proud. I should add he had Sephardic genetics in him as well, but not as prominent. The Ashkenazi was on his mom's side, if I remember correctly. So that's according to Jewish, culture. He's Ashkenazi. So, and he openly said that he thought the two didn't have to be exclusive. His Ashkenazi Judaism didn't have to be exclusive from the Church of Satan. He was proud of both his religions, whatever that means. So that's just like a funny. I find Christ is kind of like when he's showing us things, he puts in tiny little funny things here. Like I'm literally saying the Synagogue of Satan because they literally formed the Church of Satan. Anyways, besides the point. Once again, I want to go on the record here and say it's not all Ashkenazi. Most of them, the majority, I'd say probably like 99% of them, have no idea about any of this, and they're literally being taught by the upper echelon within this group, right? Who it's supremacists. They believe, just like there's supremacists in every other demographic, these supremacists believe that they are God's chosen people and they are going to bring the Messiah in. They believe that Christ was not the Messiah and they're going to bring the actual Messiah in. So I'm going to get to that in a second when we're talking about the beasts. Anyways, I hope I've explained properly who the Ashkenazi are, where they've come from. They are now the majority of Jews, self-proclaimed Jews on this earth. They're sitting about 83%. They are definitely the massive majority in the state of Israel, and they make all the rules, regulations, and decisions for the state of Israel. In fact, the Hebrews that are in the state of Israel to this day claim that the Ashkenazi beat them down, treat them like garbage, discriminate against them, don't let them go into public life. And the ones that complain about the most are actually the Ethiopian Hebrews. So, shocker. Anyways, they get treated like second-class citizens. So now let's move on to the beast. Okay. Now, the beast itself is not the state of Israel. The state of Israel is one of the heads of the beast. Okay. And I'm going to explain that in a second here. But we're going to go to the verses. We're going to go to the actual verses themselves in Revelation, where the beast is mentioned, minus the one where he's mentioned briefly while the two witnesses are walking. We'll probably discuss that in a different recording. I actually want to go through Revelation. I just want to talk. I want to spread the Lord's word and the fact that he is coming soon. He is coming back very soon, and the signs are starting to present themselves. Okay, we're not even going to mention the fact that Israel has 200 red heifers that are meant to be sacrificed so the third temple can be built. Okay, now when the third temple is going to be built, I don't know. They were hoping it was going to be soon. They were going to consecrate it. But everyone points out, well, there's still this mosque on the Temple Mount and all this stuff. Well, Israel says that Hezbollah and all them have been trying to bomb it. So we'll see if those are even standing much longer. Now, once again, the state of Israel itself is not the beast. What the state of Israel becomes is the beast, and I'll explain. The state of Israel is one of the heads of the beast, and once again, I will explain that in a second. But we're just going to go through this. Chapter 13 is not as descriptive, but there's some key points in here where I can explain all of my conclusions and all this good stuff. So, Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and onwards. And I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns 10 diadems, and on his heads names of blasphemy. So the beast comes up out of the sea. We know this to be the Mediterranean Sea, right? Israel is coming up out of the Mediterranean Sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns 10 diadems. So he had 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 diadems. Diadems are crowns, right? And we'll talk about what the 10 horns represent. And the 7 heads, okay? And we'll talk about that, what they represent, in chapter 17, because it's a lot more explanatory. But right now I want to focus on his heads, the names of blasphemy. So there's 7 heads. There's 1 name of blasphemy on each head, which means there's 7 names of blasphemy. Now, the 7 names of blasphemy are not Caesar's. I don't know why anyone thought that. The names of Caesar's. The heads of the beast are not Caesar's. Okay, 7 random Caesars throughout history, because they may or may not have persecuted the Christians or the Jews more. I don't know, okay, where this idea came from, but it makes no sense. Because if you believe that this beast has 7 heads that are Caesars, and they have these 7 names written on their head, and it's coming up out of the sea, then you believe there's an actual 7-headed beast, an actual creature that's going to come out of the sea and start making war with everyone on earth, and half of the earth's population, or 1/4, whatever it is going to start worshiping it. That makes no sense logically, okay? The book of Revelation is about the future. Now, this current time in history, or in time. This current time in time is what Revelation is about. So when John's describing things, he's using like old terminology, okay? Like in the olden days, a beast didn't necessarily, like, they use it to describe something that was big and ferocious and stuff like that. So this isn't an actual beast that's coming out of the water here. And if it was, then you'd be crazy to think that every single country on earth wouldn't band together to kill it instantly, right? Like it makes no sense. So anyways, so on his heads, names of blasphemy. I am going to tell you what the 7 names of blasphemy are. In modern Judaism, in Ashkenazi Judaism, okay, they have 7 names for God, okay, and not a single one of them is Christ, right? They have 7 names for God, and they constantly argue. They have been for centuries. They argue about which of these names is proper, which of these names can be used in day-to-day life, which of these names should be written down and shouldn't be written down, which of these names should be thrown out. So it's a constant distraction from God's true plan and purpose, which is Christ. And they're just constantly arguing, and they're drawing more and more and more people away, and they're stumbling more and more people. All of these victims of modern Judaism, all these victims of Ashkenazi Judaism who were pulled into it or their family put them in it, they have been stumbled away from Christ. And what Christ says about those who stumble his children is not good. It's not good. It has to do with a millstone and throwing yourself into the water. Okay? These are all stumbled children of Christ. We are all children of Christ. And anyone who has been pushed away to a different religion or different sect or different whatever has been stumbled. Okay? So the 7 names of blasphemy, 1 name on each head, are the 7 names that Ashkenazi Judaism uses for God. So I'm going to read them off here. Okay? Jah, Adonai, El, Elohim, Shaddai, Tezvat, and Ehyah. Now, interestingly enough, Jah was originally Yahweh, or the textogram as it was, YHWH, but then Ashkenazi Judaism decided they were going to change it to Yah, shorten it to Yah. But they also point out that this is actually the textogram YHWH, which now Ashkenazi Judaism, modern Judaism, has declared God is actually two different genders. He's split because when you read that backwards, it's feminine. When you read it forwards, it's male. So they now believe, part of their teaching is that God's actually a split gender. He's male and female mixed together. You see what I'm saying here, guys? It's a little bit, they muddy the water. So these are the seven names of blasphemy that will be engraved, written on the 7 heads of the beast. Okay? And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. So we're going to backtrack a little bit to the lands of Ashkenaz. Okay? So when you are talking about the body of something, you're talking about the base of something, what it is made up of, what created it, where did it come from, right? So when it's talking about this body, it's describing what the body looks like of this beast. It's literally describing the root, the core, what created this beast, okay? So it's saying the beast I saw was like a leopard, okay? While Iran, specifically northern Iran, had the largest population of leopards, definitely in that time, and to this day it still has one of the largest, if not the largest population of leopards. Now, in John's time, when he was writing this on Patmos, they had what was called the Iranian mountain leopard, okay? And it would have lived in northern Iran in the kingdom of Ashkenaz, okay? His feet were like those of a bear. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. You have the Russian Caucasus, Georgia, all those different countries up there. That was part of the lands of Ashkenaz, and it's where the self-proclaimed Ashkenazi Levites come from. And so the bear, that's the bear, okay? And then you have the lion, the mouth of a lion. So the lion is the Asiatic lion, which was the most popular and the largest lion known to ever exist. And it was basically, specifically, exclusively found in the lands of Turkey up until the, I always forget what they're called now, up until the Ottomans came and they slaughtered them. When the Ottomans took over Turkey, they slaughtered all the Asiatic lions. But up until that point, they're about twice the size of African lions, by the way, but up until that point, the Asiatic lions were the known lions. If you were talking about lions, you were talking about Asiatic lions. The Romans put them in their colosseums, they put them in zoos, it was the Asiatic lion was the most common till the Ottoman Empire came and wiped them out. So you have the land of the leopard, which is Iran, you have the land of the bear, which is the Russian Caucasus, Georgia, all that stuff, and you have the land of the lion, which is Turkey. All 3 places are where the Ashkenazi hail from originally, and all 3 are what make up the base of the beast. Does that make sense? Okay. And one of his heads, as it were, slain to death, and his death stroke was healed, and the whole earth marveled after the beast. The head that was slain to death and then came back and everyone marveled, that's actually the state of Israel. The state of Israel is one of the heads of the beast. And I'm going to explain that in chapter 17 when I go to that next, because it gives it more details. And they worship the dragon because he gave authorities. So that's really, really what I wanted to talk about, because the rest is covered. He opened his mouth for blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, which tabernacle in heaven. That's Christ. Christ is God's tabernacle, guys. He's blaspheming Christ. And permission was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and the authority was given to him over every tribe. So he's going to be in charge of everyone. And it's funny because the lobby group for the state of Israel is bigger than any other lobby group on earth. It's kind of hilarious. Okay, so this is what I really want to skip to here, because I covered the main points of chapter 13 regarding the beast that comes out of the ocean. But this is the only place where it talks about the beast that comes up out of the land, the second beast, because there's 2 of them. And the second beast is the false prophet, right? And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his sight. Okay, he exercises all the authority of the first beast. Now we know that it's going to be a kingdom is the beast, right? The kingdom of Israel, as it were, and we'll get to that in a second. So he has all the authority, which means he's somebody within that group that has authority. He's somebody that has governmental position, royalty, something like that, okay? And he causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, and whose death stroke was healed. And he does great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth before men. Now, John seeing him pull fire down from heaven could have easily been confused if he was seeing ICBMs, rockets, things coming out of heaven, coming from the sky, right? And if this man's commanding it, which he would be able to if he was in charge of a country, okay? And he deceives those who dwell on the earth on account of the signs which he has given power to do before the beast, commanding those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the stroke of the sword and survived. Well, we all know that image is going to be put in the third temple when it's created. Well, the third temple is going to be created in Jerusalem. The country that controls the third temple is going to be Israel. Ergo, chances are what they put up in the temple that speaks to people will be in fact the flag of Israel, because anytime you own any government building or anything that's owned by the government, you have a flag. So you're wondering, well, how does this flag, this engraven image, talk to people? How does it do that? Well, that's pretty simple. It's a TV with a waving flag on it, and it gives announcements over the PA system. John would have no idea what this stuff was. He would have just heard a voice coming out of the temple, which would be the PA system, and he would have seen this flag waving, and would have been like, this thing's telling people to do stuff. Okay? And power was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast. So it's waving. Whoo, it's waving. That the image might even speak and cause whoever would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Well, we're going to get to that, how that's going to be possible, very shortly. Okay? And that no one may be able to buy or sell except him. And he causes all the small and the great and the rich and the poor and the freemen and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Well, this makes more sense that this is some sort of government official who's in charge of things when you find out that when we get to chapter 17 and I explain further, okay? It's going to make sense. And that no one may be able to buy or sell except him who has the mark, that is the name of the beast or the number of his name. So the mark, in the previous verse there, it says the mark is on their right hand or on their forehead. Well, there's many countries around the world right now that are working, and Sweden is like number one in the world. I know Israel's doing it for a fact, putting chips in your right hand so you can use that for money. You can go look this up. People are already practicing it and stuff. And you can just go swipe things. You can just go do stuff like that and whatever. And we'll get further into that in a second. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. It is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So the man that they're speaking of is the number of a man. He's talking about the Star of David, aka the Star of Moloch. The Star of Moloch is the 666. Okay, he's not talking about Nero, right? A big thing is they're like, well, Nero, he didn't, he wrote this during Roman times, so he didn't want Nero to be upset with him and all that stuff. Nero died in 68 AD, and John wrote this book in 90 AD. So 22 years later, don't really, or is that 30? Wait, it's 70s, 30s, so it would be 32 years later. I got my math wrong on that one. Oh no. 22 years later. Oh my goodness. Nobody judge me right now, okay? 22 years later, after Nero dies, John wrote this book. So I don't think he was putting in some kind of code in order to deceive and be like, oh, they don't know I'm talking about this long dead Roman emperor. Doesn't make any sense. Plus, this entire book was narrated to him by Christ, or by Christ through the angels. So, what? You think Christ wants to hide stuff from people? Like, be afraid, be very afraid. That's not how he works. Through him, all things are possible. Through him, there is no death. There is only life. So, trust me, he was not worried. The 666 is what is commonly known as the Star of David, right? For it is the number of a man, David being the man, and his number is 666. There are 6 tips, 6 points to this Star of Moloch. There are 6 pieces that make up the outer ring, or triangles if you want to call them, to the Star of Moloch, and the inner core of it is made up of a 6-sided hexagon. Okay, 6, 6, 6. Now, if you really want to get into the weeds, you can start measuring all the angles, all the different angles within it, and they're all 6 of some form. 6 degrees, 60 degrees, 666. It just keeps coming up. Okay. Now, you might think that's a bit of a stretch, but I would like to point out to you that people are currently believing that this false prophet is actually going to be Nero reincarnated, which I'm not against that, but he ain't going to look like Nero. That's not how that works. But, like, he's Nero reincarnated, and that's why everyone's afraid of him. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. The mark, And no one may be able to buy or sell except him who has the mark, that is the name of the beast or the number of his name. The name of the beast being the kingdom of Israel. The mark that they're going to have on their hand is going to be the Star of David, aka the Star of Moloch, showing that they are authorized to come into the kingdom of Israel when it has finished expanding. And we will get into that. So that is all I wanted to say about chapter 13. Okay? Hopefully it was clear, concise, good to go. Now we're going to move to chapter 17, where it really breaks down who the beast is. Now this also covers the whore of Babylon, and which is the secular Christianity, and we'll get into that in a separate recording. Okay? Because I got a lot to say about secular Christianity, trust me. But here we go, 17. Okay, so John is basically marveling because he sees the whore who's clothed in purple and scarlet, and he sees her riding on the back of this scarlet beast, and he's like, what's going on? And the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast who bears her, and who has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and go into perdition. And those who dwell on the earth, those whose names are not written from the foundation of the world in the book of life, will marvel when they see the beast, that he was and is not and will be present. So, the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up, and then the beast, he was and is not and will be present. So, while John is writing this, Israel as a kingdom does not exist. The kingdom of Israel does not exist. Okay? It's gone. It's owned by the Romans. It was owned by the Persians, blah, blah, blah. So in this time period when John's writing this, so the kingdom of Israel does not exist. However, the kingdom of Israel used to exist under David and Solomon, right? And the kingdom of Israel is going to exist again in the future when it becomes the beast. So that's where it says that he was, so the kingdom of Israel existed, right? And he is not, because the kingdom of Israel does not exist while John is writing this, and it will be present. So in the present times when the beast exists, the beast like will be there, kind of thing, right? So like nowadays, Israel's back, okay? And we're gonna get 1 second here. We're gonna get a little bit further, and I'm gonna explain this, okay? And they will marvel when they see the beast that he was and is not and will be present. So everyone marveled when Israel was reborn, when Israel was recreated as a state. Everyone lost their minds. It's the most amazing thing. Everyone backed them up, except for obviously the Muslim countries that are surrounding them. But Christianity across the board was like, this is amazing. Everyone in the world supported them, right? Everyone marveled. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains where the woman sits. So we see that the woman is riding on the back of the beast, which means the beast itself is a landmass, because it says here the woman will sit on the 7 heads are the 7 mountains where the woman sits. So the woman is sitting on the back of the beast. The beast itself has 7 mountains, which means it's a landmass. It's not a creature. It's not a person. It's a landmass. Okay. And then now, if you pull up, because Israel has a plan to become what's called Greater Israel. It will be known as the New Kingdom of Israel, because that's how Lucifer works. The first New Kingdom of Israel was the one that worshipped Moloch, had the banner of Moloch as its star. It became the northern part. It became known as the New Kingdom of Israel. When Judah and Israel split apart, they worshipped demons. They worshipped pagan gods. Now here we're back. The New Kingdom of Israel, aka the beast, is going to show up. But not yet, because it is currently rising. So there are 7 mountains that the woman is riding on, which means the beast has 7 mountains. So let's look at all the countries that the state of Israel has made. Basically, they put on notice. They've said, we are coming and we're expanding to our original borders. Okay? Every single one of these countries has a mountain range in it, a prominent mountain range. Now, if you take those mountains and you connect them all together, you will get the border of the New Kingdom of Israel when it's completed. Okay. So those are the countries they're going to go into. So Israel already has, right? The state of Israel already has a mountain. Syria, which just fell, has a mountain, right? We'll get into this 1 second. So the 7 heads are the 7 mountains where the woman sits, and are 7 kings. Okay, so the heads are also 7 kings, not emperors. Which is what the Romans were known as at the time. Not emperors, kings. Okay? Kings are in charge of kingdoms, not empires. Kings are in charge of kingdoms, which means that there's 7 kingdoms that are the heads. that are the heads of the beast. Okay. 7 kings, 5 have fallen. Okay. So 5 of these kings will be taken over by Israel. The state of Israel will take it over. Syria was the first to go. Syria is the first of the 5 that have fallen. Assad, as it were. He's the king that fell. The kingdom that fell is Syria. Now you're going to say things like, or you're going to say, well, I thought NATO, I thought it was some terrorist revolutionary group. Well, Turkey and NATO openly admitted they were funding them. And now, if you look to see who is currently conquering Syria and taking it, because this revolutionary force has all but basically stepped back and been like, yeah, we don't want to fight anyone, we're just going to hang out. Well, the state of Israel has pushed past Damascus, which was the capital of Syria, and now they're taking more and more ground. It's looking like they're going to have at least half of Syria by the time they're done. So, interesting. So there's the first kingdom. The first king was Assad. His kingdom that fell was Syria. Okay? See how fast that happened too? It's quick. Very quick. Right? The Lord comes like a thief in the night. So does all of this end stuff. 5 have fallen. So that means there's 4 more nations that will fall, or their leader will run away and it'll be taken out by a proxy group. Okay? So 5 have fallen. 1 is... Okay, so whatever country at that time that existed... Anyways, 1 is, so during this time when the beast has risen, right, there's going to be 1 nation that is allied to Israel and is willing to do whatever they do with it so they don't get taken, basically. And I'm going to lean towards Egypt for that one, considering Egypt has started moving their capital city across the Nile, and Israel's supposed to expand to the Nile in order for the new kingdom of Israel to be formed. So maybe, but your guess is as good as mine. But one of these nations, out of the 7 heads, one of the nations is an allied nation that is in the area. Okay. The other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain only a short time. So that's actually the state of Israel itself. Okay, and then this is this next verse explains how one of the heads is also the state of Israel. And the beast who was, right? So the kingdom of Israel was and is not. Well, John's writing it because the kingdom of Israel doesn't exist. He himself is also the 8th. So that confirms that when they said the one that's come back and will be present, he's talking about the state of Israel, right? Because he himself is also the 8th. So the state of Israel becomes the new kingdom of Israel and is the beast and is out of the 7. So one of the heads, the original head of the beast, is the state of Israel. So we have 2 heads that have formed now. We have the state of Israel is one of the heads, and we have Syria is one of the heads. Those 2 have formed. Now we have 2 heads of the 7-headed beast. Okay? You get how that is, though? One of the 7, so Israel, the one that he must remain only a short time. The reason why Israel must remain only a short time is because it becomes the kingdom of Israel, right? So the state of Israel's existed since 1948, and by 2000 and maybe 2 years from now, 2026, 2027, it will become the kingdom of Israel. Okay? The head that resurrected was a marvel because Israel became a nation again. No one thought that was possible. Everyone was amazed by this. And now they have more power than anyone. They're pretty powerful. Okay? So the beast who was and is not, he himself is also the 8th and is out of the 7 and goes into perdition. So the beast is one of the heads as well, which would be the state of Israel, who eventually becomes the kingdom of Israel. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings. So are 10 kings which have not yet received a kingdom, but receive authority as kings for 1 hour with the beast. So the 10 horns, right, and the 10 diadems, which are crowns, would be like the kingdoms. So in order for kings to be a king, they have to have a kingdom. So when you take the new kingdom of Israel, or the greater Israel area, or whatever they want to call it, the greater state of Israel, whatever name they're giving it right now, it'll be the new kingdom of Israel. Because that's how Lucifer works. Once again, when you split it apart, it's split into 10 regions / provinces / territories, whatever you want to call it. So that would be the 10 horns, and the 10 diadems are the kings themselves that are in charge of it. Okay, and the reason why they don't have power right now into the beast is because the beast hasn't been fully formed. These regions haven't been created yet, and these governors haven't been put into place, but they will. And these have one mind, which goes to show you that they're regions, they're governors underneath the mantle of the beast, underneath the mantle of the new kingdom of Israel. These have one mind, and they give their power and authority to the beast, because they are all underneath his mantle. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. Amen. And they who are with him, the called, chosen, and faithful, will also overcome them. Okay, these are followers of Christ, actual believers, because as it stands right now, remember how they said everyone's going to be like, well, earlier on you see that I saw the woman that's talking about the harlot riding the beast, and she's like having a good time and all this stuff. Yeah, that's secular Christianity. There's about 40,000 different secular Christian groups, and the majority of them support Israel to the end of time. Like I've seen pastors and ministers on social media calling for the complete annihilation of the Palestinians, which, by the way, about 10 to 30% of their population can trace their lineage back to the original Hebrews. Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, all of them can trace their heritage back to the original 12 tribes. Meanwhile, the majority of Israel, the state of Israel, can't. They are converts. But yet, it's anti-Semitic to speak against the state of Israel, which is mainly made up of people who aren't even Semitic, while they continue to bomb people who are actually Semitic. Do you not see the confusion and chaos Lucifer is causing? The lies upon lies. It's quite insane, actually, when you start to pull apart the threads and take a look. Okay. So, followers of Christ will see this, because when you are not secular, when you're not held underneath some corporate mantle where you have to follow their rules and what they say, some top dog, because every single corporate, every single secular church group, Christian group, denominational group, they all have someone they're beholding to. I am beholding to Christ and Christ alone. I don't care about your title. I don't care how much school you have. I don't care. And neither should any other followers of Christ. You answer to Christ and Christ alone. That's it. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Doubting Thomas asked questions all the time, and Christ loved him. Christ loved him more than most people. So yeah, ask questions, because guess what? We've been led astray by secular Christianity for way too long. We just adopt their teachings. Where do you think Christmas comes from? Where do you think all of this stuff about, it's going to be some 7-headed Roman beast coming out of the ground? No, it's not. It's the state of Israel, which is creating a state that is specifically for a demographic of people who are opposed 100% to Christ. That's the most anti-Christ thing you can do. You created an entire nation that was anti-Christ. Oh my goodness. And we were all convinced and told that because they were God's chosen people, which the majority of them aren't, they're pretending, because they were God's chosen people, we can't say anything critical of them. Well, guess what? The people who have persecuted the Hebrews, God's actual chosen people, the people who have persecuted them worse than anyone since 1000 CE, let's say, have been the Ashkenazi. All this Jew hatred that's been brought on has been brought by... The Hebrews are peaceful. They're peaceful people. They don't want to be in wars. And now they're being forced to join into this fighting effort. And that's why you'll see them protesting in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and stuff like that. But all of this was for money and power. Mammon. Right? And now we have a synagogue of Satan. And we have the beast forming. It's rising. The beast is rising. There's 2 heads now. All you need is 5 more. Okay? So, continuing on. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and tongues and nations. I will get to the harlot in the next audio, because I feel like there should be a very specific one about secular Christianity, and the harlot is secular Christianity. And the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the harlot, and will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh, and burn her utterly with fire. So when the state of Israel becomes the kingdom of Israel, when the beast is fully risen into the new kingdom of Israel, okay, they will start to turn on secular Christians. And they're already starting to do it a little bit. They're destroying Christian heritage sites that are considered holy land. They've been destroying them as they went along. But they'll go ham. They'll start going after secular Christians hard. For God has put it into their hearts to perform his mind and to perform one mind and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are accomplished. Yeah. So there you go. That's it. A few more things to add in. Okay, so when the kingdom of Israel, and these are some modern stuff that I just want to kind of address. So oftentimes you'll probably be wondering right now, well, how does Israel is Israel allowed to expand like this? Well, they've already taken half of Syria. As long as you are on their side, if you will, they're going to keep going. So as long as they have anybody, they don't care, right? Now we might see a bit of a hiatus because we just saw the incoming president of the United States basically push a deal. He threatened everyone. He actually threatened, reports coming, he threatened Netanyahu as well. He threatened Israel, and that's Trump. And he basically was like, if you don't bring this peace deal, then I'm bringing hell to the Middle East against everyone, kind of thing, right? So, but one of the big things is environmentally we have, and this is going to seem like it's a bit off topic, but it's not, I promise you. Okay, so environmentally we have what's coming, a pole shift. Okay, so every 7,000 years or so, and I'll tell you when the last time was, and you guys will be like, oh, that makes sense. So every 7,000 years or so, the North and the South Pole meet and then separate, and the Earth does almost like a 90-degree flip kind of thing, because the poles change. Oh my goodness, I'm having a brain fart right now. The equator switches where it is, so yeah. Anyways, North and South are going to change where they are. And when that happens, the last time this happened was what's called Noah's flood, right? God's great flood. That was the last time that happened. Now, it won't be as extreme this time for various scientific reasons, but it's still going to be pretty extreme. And when that happens, right prior to it happening, the sun turns black, which is very interesting because pretty much every single time they talk about Christ's return, when he comes in, they mention that the sun will go pitch black right before he comes. Okay, so the next flip we have, and it's funny because the last flip we had, it was the earth resurrecting and getting started over, right? And this flip we have is going to be the same thing, except it's going to be Christ as our king, 1,000 years of peace on earth in the golden age. Now, how does this pertain to the state of Israel, also known when it becomes the kingdom of Israel as the beast? Well, throughout Revelation it talks about how the beast is going to be able to lash out and no one will be able to stand against him. How can we stand against him? Israel is a self-sufficient nation. Okay, when the power goes out, because there will, prior to this flip, right, the poles flipping, it's predicted, even NASA's talking about it at this point, that solar flaring, massive solar flaring, and CMEs, which are coronal magnetic expulsions, when eventually these are going to do what's called an electronic magnetic pulse and take out 90% of power on Earth, 95% of power on Earth, just wipe it. The state of Israel, I can guarantee you, especially as it's expanding, getting bigger and bigger, the state of Israel has its own self-sufficient power grid. So it won't be wiped by this, or at least the majority of it won't be. And if you think Israel right now is bad with their expansionism, okay, if you think they're bad right now, you wait until every surrounding country around them has no power or electricity, and they're the only ones that have it. You're going to see they're going to be their tracking is going to be insane. Everything they do. So people are going to be required to get a little chip, and I bet you any money it's going to have this. It's going to be the Star of David. They're like, oh, it's just so we know that you've been secured by Israel. Everything's good. We're all, and they're going to force people to get these chips. Right? It even says in Revelation that God's going to give these people that have the mark of the beast sores. I bet you some of them are going to get infected. Okay? And if you're like, well, maybe they're going to test it and all that. Israel literally was the testing ground for the vaccines. Pfizer signed a deal with them that they could use their entire nation as guinea pigs. Do you think they really care about this stuff? No. The supremacists in this group of people within the Ashkenazi believe that they are bringing the Messiah, believe they are supposed to bring in the Messiah. Netanyahu was told by the rabbi of rabbis, who's now dead, but he was like the number one rabbi on earth. He told Netanyahu at the Benjamin Gate, he said, you are going to bring in our Messiah. Okay? The Messiah that they name, the Ashkenazi name, or the State of Israel name, will be the false prophet. Whoever that Messiah is. And I am going to place money. No, betting is wrong. I'm going to say it's probably Netanyahu. He has the authority. He has the ability to call fire in. And he's like the hero to Israel right now. Or it's going to be somebody else. But whoever they declare their Messiah is the false prophet, also known as the second beast in the book of Revelation. Okay, so we're going to have a power outage. Israel will be able to maintain its power grid. It will start to beat down everyone around it while it continues to expand. Okay, when the power goes out globally, that is the beginning of trials and tribulations. Okay, you want to talk about trials and tribulations. You have an entire society that is all about electricity and surviving off digital stuff. Take that away from them in a matter of seconds and watch. That's trials and tribulations. Experts believe within the first year of a complete global power outage, 90% of the Earth's population is going to die just because they're going to sit there and do nothing because they don't know how to survive. So brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, it's coming. Trials and tribulations is when the power goes out. Christ's return will be 7 years after that, when the North and South Pole finally do their little flip. He's going to take that opportunity to come in. The sun will go black, and we will see the Son of Man descending in the clouds, from the clouds, with legions of his followers, legions of his angels. But, quick overview, quick conclusion. The state of Israel is ahead of the beast. When the state of Israel expands and becomes the kingdom of Israel, it will be the beast itself. We're going to see this, okay, in our lifetime. Christ is returning. He is coming very soon. Be vigilant and watch and wait. Amen.